a group of friends, snuck into an underwater cave in the desert. But when they returned to the entrance, one of them was missing. They didn't dare think too much. Put their tanks back on and dove in again. When they surfaced once more, another person was gone. This bizarre and eerie incident took place at Devil's Hole in Nevada, USA. Devil's Hole is located right next to the famous Area 51. In this barren, lifeless desert, a pool of water suddenly appears here. From above, it looks like nothing more than an ordinary shallow ravine. The fence around it was built to protect a rare species known as the Devil's Hole pupfish. This fish is only 2 to 3 centimeters long, with a shimmering pearly blue body, and is one of the rarest fish on Earth. There are only a little over 100 left in the world. In 1952, President Truman signed an executive order, designating Devil's Hole as a protected national reserve. But what people were truly curious about was never the tiny fish, but the mysterious cave hidden beneath the pool. In 1964, professional diver Jim from California led a cave exploration team to conduct research in Devil's Hole. After dozens of dives, they gradually mapped out the true structure of the cave. From the water's surface downward, the first 10 meters are the main habitat of the pupfish, where light can still penetrate. Below that is a passage known as the main chamber. On the right side of the main chamber are countless branching tunnels, stretching into the darkness like a maze. It is extremely easy to get lost. At around 50 meters deep, the passage suddenly narrows, forming a funnel-shaped opening. Passing through it, the view suddenly opens up into a hall measuring 91 meters long and 12 meters wide, known as Acre Canyon. Jim later told reporters that the cave walls there were brilliantly colored, the most beautiful limestone he had ever seen in his life, reflected through the water. It felt like being inside a dreamlike fairy tale world. At around 100 meters deep, the walls narrow again into a long, tight passage. Jim called it the Eye of Water. Passing through it, the cave opens up once again, revealing a vast unknown space, so deep that no one has ever reached it. Jim's exploration was widely reported by the media. His descriptions of the cave's beauty made countless diving enthusiasts eager to try it themselves. Among them were 4 young men who decided to explore it. They were Paul, David, and the brothers Jack and Bill. Paul was 19 and worked in a cafeteria at a nearby nuclear test site. David was 20, a parking attendant at a Las Vegas casino, and had recently married Paul's sister. All 4 were only 19 or 20 years old, and were beginner divers, with almost zero cave diving experience. But youth makes people fearless. On the night of June 19, 1965, the 4 drove to Devil's Hole with a pile of amateur diving gear. Under the cover of night, they found a gap in the fence and slipped inside quietly. Just before entering the water, Jack, the older brother, suddenly hesitated and decided to stay at the entrance as support. In the end, only Paul, David, and Bill entered the water. They first placed a set of decompression tanks in the shallow area, then continued downward, passed through the funnel, and entered Acre Canyon. The colorful cave walls and flowing reflections of light left the 3 completely mesmerized. They had no idea that the deeper they went, the darker it became. Unconsciously, they had already descended to around 90 meters. At this depth, even professional cave divers would be at their limit. Yet they were using nothing more than basic recreational gear. Only when Bill realized their air was running low did the 3 snap back to reality and begin following the rope upward, back to the decompression point. But Bill and David realized Paul was not with them. At first they thought he was simply ascending more slowly, and didn't pay much attention. After decompression they continued ascending, but after surfacing and waiting for a long time, Paul still did not appear. Only then did they realize something had gone wrong. They quickly changed tanks and immediately dove back down. To save time, the two split up. Bill followed the original route downward, while David searched the right-side passages. But as the surroundings grew darker and darker, Bill became increasingly frightened, and panic set, he swam back to the surface alone, waiting for David. But after more than 10 minutes, David still did not return. Seeing both of them missing, the two brothers looked at each other in shock. Neither dared to go back down again. They jumped into their car and drove overnight to Las Vegas to report the incident. After receiving the report, the police were helpless and could only contact the only professional diver who had ever explored the site. Jim arrived at Devil's Hole at dawn on June 20th with his diving partner, along with police officers and several volunteer divers. After learning the situation, they decided to search in 3 rotating teams, with Jim personally leading. The first team entered the water, following the same route Paul and the others had taken. But this time, all they found at 30 meters depth was a flashlight resting on a rock ledge. Nothing else. The flashlight still emitted a faint beam, pointing lonely toward the cave entrance, as if it were a deliberately placed distress signal. Or perhaps the last desperate lifeline left in panic. The second team entered next. Their target was the 20 to 50 meter zone on the right, because Bill had said that during his second dive up, David had been heading in that direction. Sure enough, in that area, they found a diving mask and a breathing tube, almost certainly belonging to David. But after searching every branch and corner, there was still no sign of him. After both teams surfaced, everyone gathered together to analyze the situation. Could Paul and David have gotten lost on the way back and entered the passage leading to Brown's chamber? Brown's chamber lies to the left of the funnel entrance, a narrow side passage that slopes upward about 27 meters, leading to an air-filled chamber, where the water level is level with the entrance, meaning it is not completely sealed, and there must be small passages connecting it to the outside. If they had really swum in there and found the air pocket, then they might still be alive. This theory reignited a glimmer of hope in everyone. The third team immediately prepared to dive. But this mission was the most dangerous of the entire search operation. They had to descend to the funnel first, then enter the passage leading to Brown's chamber. Since the passage sloped upward, they also had to perform decompression before entering. After searching the air pocket area, they would have to descend vertically from the other side, return through the connecting tunnel to the funnel, and then begin ascending, followed by a second decompression stop. Just describing this procedure alone was enough to make any experienced diver tense up. However, after searching Brown's chamber, they still found nothing but emptiness. That last shred of hope was completely extinguished. At this point, everyone understood. Paul and David were most likely already dead. They had probably lost their way in the darkness and fallen into the depths of the cave, that bottomless unknown space. What remained was no longer a rescue mission, but a body recovery operation. So Jim and his team dove in for a 4th time, this time reaching a depth of 100 meters. Far exceeded the limits of normal diving safety. At this depth, nitrogen begins to affect the brain like alcohol, causing dizziness and an unexplained sense of excitement and confidence, making people feel invincible and leading to fatal decisions without realizing it. Jim was able to withstand it because he had undergone long-term specialized training for nitrogen narcosis. But Paul and David were just 2 young men with almost no cave diving experience at all. The two searched the pitch-black chamber repeatedly, still finding nothing. But what truly sent a chill down Jim's spine was what lay beneath their feet. 100 meters was not the bottom of the cave. Below that was a perfectly vertical shaft, pitch black, like a mouth devouring everything. Jim lowered a weighted rope into the shaft. Meter by meter it descended. After all 284 meters were deployed, it still did not reach bottom. Meaning, Devil's Hole is at least 380 meters deep. On a ledge at 100 meters, Jim found fragments of diving equipment. He believed Paul and David had exhausted their last breath there, and then drifted downward, disappearing into that bottomless shaft. With the technology at the time, it was impossible to go any deeper. The two were forced to abandon the search and return to the surface. The moment Jim emerged, the shore fell into silence. He reported everything underwater truthfully to everyone. The families broke down on the spot. David's mother collapsed in tears, and David's wife Paula lost both her husband and her brother in a single day. 2 young lives vanished forever into the depths of Devil's Hole. Their bodies were never recovered. After the accident, authorities sealed the cave entrance under the pretext of protecting the Devil's Hole pupfish, and banned all diving and research activities. The underground world that once fascinated countless people was never entered again. But the story of Devil's Hole did not end there. In 1991, the U.S. Geological Survey sent 3 elite divers to descend again. This time they reached 133 meters, more than 30 meters deeper than Jim's limit back then. However, they discovered that what they entered was not the vast open chamber Jim had described, but a completely new narrow passage descending further, still with no visible end. Meaning, the structure of Devil's Hole was far more complex than anyone had imagined. It is not just a cave, but an entire maze extending deep into the Earth's crust. In fact, scientists later discovered that Devil's Hole is merely a window. Beneath it lies a vast underground water system, buried several kilometers below the surface, containing snowmelt that seeped in from distant mountains over 10,000 years ago, flowing slowly through underground rock layers, until a fault line forced it upward here, forming this seemingly ordinary pool of water. The clearest evidence of how massive this system is a shocking phenomenon. Earthquakes in Japan, Indonesia, or Chile, on the other side of the Pacific Ocean, can cause this desert pool to slosh back and forth like water in a bathtub, waves even rising up to 2 meters against the cave walls. In other words, this unremarkable desert pool is actually connected to the pulse of the entire Earth. No one knows how deep Devil's Hole truly is, and no one knows what it connects to beneath the ground. 60 years have passed, and Devil's Hole still guards its secrets, while beneath the abyss, everything has fallen silent.